Video contains violent content, details that are not suitable for common perception. Please consider before watching. Chapter 147 Repayment 1. Crack. Crunch. As cracks formed, his skin peeled off like a shell and his muscles twisted and contorted. Upon witnessing his transformation, Chong Ryong clicked her tongue and remarked, "Why did you give him a clue to enlightenment?" Her desire was for the current heaven and earth society to crumble. However, thanks to the words Mok Jae-eun had spoken, the Poison King Baek-saha had gained some sort of enlightenment. As a result, he was now able to break through his bottleneck. This also meant that he would become significantly stronger than he was now. You did something unnecessary. Chong Ryong was not pleased with this. Yet there was no response from Mok Jae-eun. He was someone who had mastered telepathy and would always provide answers unless it was a special case. Why wasn't he responding now? Puzzled, she looked at Mok Jae-eun's face. This guy. Mok Jae-eun was intently staring at Baek-saha, who was undergoing a complete metamorphosis. It wasn't an expression of amazement or awe. He was observing as if studying him. Chong Ryong grew curious about what thoughts were going through his mind as he watched this. What are you so deeply pondering? And those thoughts held quite an unexpected aspect. Rather than focusing on the external process of Baek-saha's body being reconstructed, Mok Jae-eun was keenly observing how the internal energy was transforming. Was it like this? After staring for a while, the corners of Mok Jae-eun's lips twitched. For martial artists, a complete metamorphosis. One was a realm that existed only in dreams. It was a phenomenon where, upon breaking through a bottleneck, one's body would be reconstructed according to their increased cultivation level, resulting in a physique that could be considered the most ideal form for oneself. Ha! A gasp escaped from Baek-saha's mouth. Unlike a typical transformation, his clothes had almost entirely melted away, leaving him nearly naked as he had become a complete poison master. The corners of Baek-saha's lips curled upward. The reason was simple. I thought I might never be able to stand again. He stood up on his own 2 feet. How long had it been since he last experienced this sensation? He was so excited and moved that his heart pounded. Amidst his emotions, Mok Jae-eun's voice reached his ears. Congratulations. At this, Baek-saha turned his head to look at Mok Jae-eun. I was worried you might go back to drinking my blood, but instead, you even underwent a complete metamorphosis. Upon hearing Mok Jae-eun's words, Baek-saha once again realized the significance of what had happened to him. He himself was aware that he had undergone a metamorphosis. However, hearing it from someone else felt quite different. Kakik. That laughter doesn't suit you right now. It doesn't suit me? Yes. At a glance, you appear to be in your late 40s? No, mid-40s. You've rejuvenated. At Mok Jae-eun's remark, a glint appeared in Baek-saha's eyes. Rejuvenated? Baek-saha unconsciously touched his face. The wrinkles that had felt dense on his face had nearly disappeared, and his skin was elastic. Oh my! There was no mirror in the meditation room to confirm in detail, but judging from the significantly reduced wrinkles on his hands, he truly felt as if he had become much younger. Come to think of it, the 2 individuals among the 5 kings who had received the title of 8 stars also appeared much younger than their actual age. I merely wished to walk again. Not only had he become a poison master, but he had also broken through his bottleneck. Now he could genuinely say that he had reached the realm of the 8 stars. Unable to contain his emotions, Mok Jae-eun spoke to him. It seems you have achieved the results you desired. With this, the proposal I made earlier is practically nullified. Proposal? Yes. You have already become a poison master, haven't you? At Mok Jae-eun's words, the corners of Baek-saha's mouth rose. Kakik. Are you disappointed? I thought I might be able to hear that story from you more easily, but it appears you have obtained what you wanted through your own efforts. Through my own efforts. Do you think I am someone with such little shame? What do you mean by that? Baek-saha placed his hands behind his back, an old habit, and said, If it weren't for you, young man, I would have either lost my life today or spent the rest of my days as a paraplegic, unable to even open my eyes. Thank you for saying it directly. At Mok Jae-eun's response, one of Baek-saha's eyebrows arched upward. As expected, this fellow was saying things he didn't truly mean. He believed that thanks to him Beksaha had gained enlightenment and undergone a complete metamorphosis. Of course those words weren't entirely wrong. You're quite an impudent fellow. If that's how you feel, I apologize. Don't say things you don't mean. I am well aware that I owe you a debt I could never repay in my lifetime. Then you should be able to grant my request. Of course. Beksaha readily agreed. This young man had allowed him to walk on his own 2 feet again and had helped him reach the 8th level of the Wave Demon Poison Scripture, becoming a poison master, something he had longed for. He was no different from a benefactor to Beksaha, so what couldn't he do for him? What are you curious about? First, promise me that you will answer unconditionally. A promise? I have already said with my own mouth that I will agree. Do you think I would go back on my word? I'm just saying this as a precaution. At Mok Jaeungun's words, Beksaha shook his head and said, I promise. I will answer any question you have. Thank you. What are you curious about? The Ghost Blade. At Mok Jaeungun's unexpected words, Beksaha momentarily furrowed his brows. He wondered what the young man wanted to ask that required a promise, but an unexpected question had emerged. Why are you asking about that? I can't tell you the reason, but let's just say I'm curious about who the Ghost Blade is. You're curious? Yes. Oh my. To cut to the chase, I heard you had crossed blades with the Ghost Blade. Is that true? It is. It was a well-known anecdote that everyone was aware of. However, while many had asked about this matter, Beksaha had never given a proper answer. There were 2 reasons for this. The first was, it couldn't even be called a duel. Using his vast experience and the unique methods of his poison-based martial arts, he had merely endured for a short while. If the duel had been prolonged, he would have eventually been the one to lose. Beksaha opened his mouth. Why are you curious about the Ghost Blade? I already told you. Are you saying you can't reveal the reason? Yes. At Mok Jaeungun's answer, Beksaha's eyes narrowed. He was conflicted. He was concerned about what intentions this child had for being curious about the Ghost Blade. If that intention stemmed from pure curiosity, it would be fine, but he worried if it might be driven by negative emotions. However, a promise was a promise. Since I said I would tell you, I will do so regardless of the reason. However, I also have a request for you. A request? Yes. It's not a difficult one. May I ask what it is? Do not reveal what you hear from me in this place. Do not reveal it? Yes. As a member of the Heaven and Earth Society, you will soon understand why I am saying this. I understand. After Mok Jaeungun agreed, Beksaha answered the question. First, regarding the question of whether I know who the Ghost Blade is, I cannot answer because I don't know either. What? What did he mean by that? Since they had fought directly, wouldn't he know the Ghost Blade's face? Puzzled, Mok Jaeungun listened as Beksaha continued. It is true that I crossed blades with the Ghost Blade, but his face was covered with a black mask, so there was no way to confirm his identity. His face was covered? Then what about the story of the Ghost Blade stopping the fight midway? That is true. So, are you saying that during the fight the Ghost Blade suggested stopping and you agreed? If that was all there was to it, it would be quite a waste of effort. Just as he was about to feel let down, Beksaha shook his head and said, Does that make sense? Even if I was clearly losing against him, I am still a martial artist. I wouldn't accept such a proposal to save my life in the middle of a fight. Losing? Was he being overpowered? Beksaha casually revealed the fact that he had been at a disadvantage. Considering he had never disclosed this until now, it seemed he had a strong sense of pride. Had he become more composed after gaining enlightenment? Although curious, that wasn't the main question. Then is that rumor also true? Rumor. The rumor that the Ghost Blade might be one of the society leader's personal guards. Ha! At Mok Jaeungun's words, Beksaha clicked his tongue. A considerable amount of time had passed since this incident, and it was slowly fading from many people's memories. Younger disciples might not even be aware of it, so where had he heard this story from? Since he was a disciple of the Shadow Clan, had he heard it from the Shadow Clan master? You know quite a bit. Is it true? I don't know. What? I also don't know whether he is one of the personal guards or not. What do you mean by that? At Mok Jaeungun's question, Beksaha recalled the events from 17 years ago. The ghost blade, who had displayed an astonishing divine technique that drained away all of his poison techniques, suddenly distanced himself and requested to stop the duel. What are you doing? Don't tell me you're going to show mercy in a life-or-death duel? On the contrary, it was a humiliation for a martial artist. They were engaged in a duel where their lives were at stake. Yet even though he had the upper hand, what kind of nonsense was this? However, Poison King, do you want to fight against an injured person? Injured? As Beksaha asked in return, the ghost blade opened his upper garment and revealed his chest. Surprisingly, there was a palm-sized mark on his chest that appeared to be a scar. The affected area had turned black and sunken in. Moreover, judging from the black veins protruding from the wound, it looked as if poison scar. It seemed as if he had been struck by a poisonous hand technique. Could it be that he had fought against a master from the Four Heavens Tang clan or the Gyeong clan? However, what was even more absurd was, he fought against me in this condition? Beksaha found it utterly ridiculous. The ghost blade's condition was truly severe, to the point where it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it a serious injury. Yet he had displayed martial prowess that almost overwhelmed him, draining away all of his poison techniques. While in such a state, it was even more humiliating. His desire to settle things with the ghost blade had vanished. At this, Beksaha asked, "Who did you fight against to end up like this? The Gyeong clan? The Sichuan Tang clan?" He didn't expect an answer when he asked. However, unexpected words escaped from the ghost blade's mouth. He Yong, the medicine immortal. What did he just say? He Yong, the medicine immortal, was known as one of the greatest pharmacists of the era, alongside wailing Dr. Ho Ta. He was a pharmacist, not a martial artist. What are you saying? As he asked in confusion, the ghost blade threw something to him. It was none other than, "This is. Now you should understand that we have no reason to fight anymore. How did you get this? Deliver that to him. Inform him of my injury and tell him I was interrupted." What do you mean by that? Just tell him that much. With those words, the ghost blade swiftly moved and disappeared from sight. Beksaha tried to chase after him, but he vanished with such incredible lightness skill that it was hard to believe he was seriously injured, making it impossible to catch up to him. So you really don't know who he is? Yes. What I learned from fighting against him is that he was seriously injured by the individual known as the greatest pharmacist of the era, medicine immortal He Yong. That's all you know. At first I couldn't believe it. No one had ever heard of medicine immortal He Yong cultivating martial arts until then. He was a pharmacist after all. Well, he could have kept it hidden. Yes, that could be possible. However, one thing is certain. If medicine immortal He Yong truly inflicted serious injuries on the ghost blade, then his poison techniques far surpass mine. That made the duel even more humiliating for Beksaha. It meant that an old pharmacist who was renowned for his medical skills had overwhelmed the ghost blade, one of the 8 stars with superior poison techniques compared to him, who had devoted his entire life to refining poison arts. I see. Now Mok Jaeun understood why Beksaha had glossed over the matter and kept it hidden from everyone back then. Perhaps it was also a matter of pride as a master of poison techniques. Mok Jaeun asked him, "But what exactly was the item the ghost blade gave you?" He had mentioned that by giving that item, there was no longer a reason for them to fight. What did he give him? Chapter 148, Repayment 2. But what exactly was the item the ghost blade gave you? The ghost blade had given it to Beksaha, saying there was no longer a reason for them to fight. What did he give him? At Mok Jaeun's question, Beksaha let out a soft sigh and answered, "Phew. It was the society leader's token." The society leader's token? Upon hearing this, Mok Jaeun furrowed his brows. Based on Beksaha's words, he had thought that the ghost blade might not be related to the Heaven and Earth Society, but if that was the case, the story changed. If he gave you the society leader's token, does that mean the ghost blade is connected to the society leader? I don't know for certain either. What do you mean by not knowing for certain? It means there's no way to tell what kind of connection he has with the society leader or what instructions he received from the society leader. It was a somewhat ambiguous answer. At this, Mok Jaeun asked, "Then did you deliver the token to the society leader as the ghost blade requested?" "Yes, I did." "May I ask what the society leader said?" "He said nothing." "What? Did he mean there was no reaction after delivering it? As he was puzzled, Baek Saha lightly placed his hand on Mok Jae-un's shoulder and said, "The only thing the society leader said was this." "What is it?" "He ordered me not to reveal anything I learned while fighting the Ghost Blade to anyone. Of course, that includes the token as well. Do you now understand why I told you not to let what you hear from me in this place leak out? It was all by the society leader's order. In the first place, the duel with the Ghost Blade was a humiliating incident for Baek Saha as well, so their interests aligned, and it had been well kept as a secret until now." Society leader. Mok Jae-un's gaze grew somewhat heavy. He had tried to learn the Ghost Blade's identity through Baek Saha, but instead he only found out that there was a close connection between him and the Heaven and Earth Society's society leader. Chong Ryong, who had been listening to this conversation, inwardly felt relieved. "It's unfortunate, but I should say it's fortunate for me." She had been worried that Mok Jae-un might leave this place if the connection between the Ghost Blade and the Heaven and Earth Society disappeared. However, coincidentally, as it turned out to be related to the society leader, the reason for him to stay here became even more clear. It could be said to be a fortunate turn of events for Chong Ryong. "In the end, it seems that your purpose and mine align to some extent, you despicable being." "It seems so." Mok Jae-un's gaze turned cold. The situation had become a bit more complicated. He had hoped for a more straightforward clue about the culprit, but he only found out that the society leader might also be involved in this matter. The society leader is a clue. He was related to the Ghost Blade who might have killed his grandfather. Since it was an incident from 17 years ago, he couldn't determine a direct connection, but one thing was certain. The society leader knew about the Ghost Blade. That meant he needed a way to contact the society leader. However, the problem was that meeting the society leader was incomparably more difficult than meeting Baek Saha. He was the leader of the Heaven and Earth Society in one of the six heavens, known as the pinnacle of the current martial arts world. "I need a way to make contact." No method came to mind at the moment. Baek Saha had the justification of the 3 society leader disciple tokens, but the society leader was different. There was no natural way to get close to him. While his mind was filled with those thoughts, Baek Saha spoke. "Why aren't you answering?" "Pardon? Didn't I tell you that as a member of the association, you shouldn't reveal it either?" Yes. Of course." At Mok Jae-un's answer, Baek Saha looked at him with suspicious eyes. He had told him despite it being the society leader's order because of the promise, but judging from Mok Jae-un's reaction, it seemed he had some connection to the Ghost Blade in one way or another. At this, Baek Saha spoke as if advising him. "Although I told you because it was a promise, it would be better for your well-being not to dig too deeply into matters regarding the Ghost Blade. Besides, he disappeared 17 years ago. Whether it's a good connection or a bad one, it's best to forget about it now." "Disappeared?" That was yet to be known. The mark left on his late grandfather's wound was related to the Ghost Blade. Anyway, in response to Baek Saha's advice, Mok Jae-un politely brought his hands together and replied, "I will keep that in mind." "I hope you do, even if it's just lip service." "How could I give lip service to the advice you give me?" "Kakik. You're good with words. Thanks to you, my curiosity has been satisfied, and you have obtained what you wanted. I shall return to the Shadow Clan now." Mok Jae-un had no more business with Baek Saha. "What?" At his words, a glint appeared in Baek Saha's eyes. Although he had told him, going against the society leader's order to keep it a secret, it wasn't something that could be considered a proper repayment. Yet he was just going to leave. "You're quite a peculiar fellow." "Pardon? Did you come all the way here just to satisfy that curiosity of yours?" That's... You didn't come to seek my teachings." "Ka. What kind of fellow is this? Using the benefit of the society leader disciple tokens just as a pretext to meet me." Baek Saha burst into laughter, holding his stomach. As the holder of the society leader disciple tokens of the Corpse Blood Valley, Mok Jae-un had the privilege of receiving teachings from him. But he was saying he would leave without even receiving that benefit, so how impudent was that? It meant he had no intention of learning from the beginning. "I've been caught." Mok Jae-un scratched his head, wondering what to do about this. While he was doing so, Baek Saha, who had been laughing for a while, stopped and said, "You made me laugh for the first time in a long while. I apologize." "What do you have to apologize for?" "But listen. Since you brought the 3 society leader disciple tokens of the Corpse Blood Valley, I can't just let you go. What do you mean by not being able to let me go? Of course I will pass on martial arts to you. Martial arts? Kakik. Yes. Then may I ask what you will teach me? At Mok Jaeongun's question, Baek Saha stroked his beard and replied. I will teach you poison techniques. Poison techniques? It seems that even though you have become a poison master, you don't know how to use poison techniques at all. Who taught you about poisons? I just learned bits and pieces from physicians or pharmacists. At Mok Jaeongun's words, Baek Saha snorted. What did this fellow take him for to say such a thing? Even if one devoted their entire life to refining poison techniques, it would be uncertain whether they could reach the level of a poison master. Yet he claimed to have reached that level with shallow knowledge learned from physicians and pharmacists? Learn bits and pieces? Don't talk nonsense. Even if you don't believe it, it's the truth. Do you think I'm going to capture and eat the one who taught you poison if I find out? Well, that's not it. Then why aren't you revealing it? Do you have a reason to hide it? Phew. At his question, Mok Jaeongun felt annoyed inwardly. If he didn't give an appropriate answer, it seemed Baek Saha would keep probing. So, I understand. There's no reason to hide this, so I'll tell you. The mentor who taught me about medicinal herbs and poisonous plants has already passed away. What? He passed away. He's deceased. Yes. Oh my. Baek Saha let out a small sigh. He was genuinely curious about who had turned Mok Jaeongun into a poison master. But judging from Mok Jaeongun's tone and the faint sense of loss in his eyes, it seemed it wasn't a lie. I suppose it's true. Ahem. I don't know who he was, but if he was skilled enough in poisons to turn you into a poison master without even passing on poison techniques, he must have been no ordinary person. Even the Four Heavens Tang clan or the Gyeong clan. At that moment, a certain nickname flashed through Baek Saha's mind. Medicine Immortal Hae-young, the Medicine Immortal? Until now he had believed that only his Baek clan, the Four Heavens Tang clan, and the Gyeong clan were the supreme masters of poison techniques in the Central Plains. But 17 years ago, the one who had inflicted a serious injury on the ghost blade with a poison scar. He had said it was Medicine Immortal Hae-young. When one became proficient and reached the pinnacle in a particular field, they naturally became knowledgeable in the opposite nature as well. Wasn't Baek Saha himself also a master in pharmacology? Poison techniques might be like that for Medicine Immortal Hae-young. Baek Saha stared intently at Mok Jaeongun's face. But soon he shook his head. Yes. That can't be. No matter how he thought about it, the connection between this fellow and Medicine Immortal Hae-young was too far-fetched. Then what exactly was the identity of that person? But it seemed unlikely that this stubborn fellow would reveal it at the moment. Let's find out gradually. Hiding his inner thoughts, Baek Saha said. Kakik, anyway, if you learn poison techniques from me, you'll be able to fully utilize the poison within you. Fully utilize the poison? Yes. Do you want to learn properly? At his question, Mok Jaeongun brought his hands together in a salute and said, How could I refuse your consideration? If you bestow your teachings upon me, I will do my best to learn. There was no reason to refuse. There was no harm in learning poison techniques. At that moment, Baek Saha suddenly asked Mok Jaeongun a question. By the way, what was that thing you fed me earlier? Could it be a divine medicine? Are you referring to the heavenly earth pill? Ah yes. I thought so. Baek Saha clicked his tongue looking at Mok Jaeongun. Divine medicines were no different from treasures to martial artists, even if it was to save his life. Yet he had used it on him without any hesitation even though he might have died. If he had really died, it would have been a wasted effort. It was truly difficult to discern what type of person this fellow was. I owe you a great debt. You don't need to think of it as a debt. No, it is a debt. Well, if you think that way, I can't help it. Then will you repay it? Of course. I have a temperament that can't stand being in debt. Is that so? Then how do you intend to repay it? As it was an equivalent exchange, I will give you a special divine medicine made by our clan. A divine medicine? Repaying a divine medicine with a divine medicine. It made sense. If you give it to me, I will gratefully accept it. However, there is a condition. You sure have a lot of conditions. It's not a bad condition at all. If you promise not to reveal anything about this divine medicine to others, I will give you 2 of them. 2. Yes. Isn't that good? At these words, Mok Jae-un didn't hide his puzzlement. He had only used one divine medicine, yet he was offering to give him 2 in exchange for not revealing it. Why would he refuse? It's not bad for me, but are you sure? Kikik. If it wasn't okay, would you not accept it? Of course not. Naturally. The divine medicine I will give you is called the Ascending Dragon Pill. 1. Created by my father, who was also the founder of our clan, Lord Baekyu. In some ways it's far superior to the Heavenly Earth Pill. Far superior? Yes. If the Heavenly Earth Pill grants 10 to a maximum of 15 years worth of internal energy, our clan's Ascending Dragon Pill, if absorbed efficiently, can grant up to 20 years worth of internal energy. At his words, a glint appeared in Mok Jae-un's eyes. If what Baek Saha said was true, it was a divine medicine far better than the Heavenly Earth Pill. I can definitely understand the reason for not revealing it. Yes. However, it's not unconditionally good. Why? In the case of the Ascending Dragon Pill, its side effects are much stronger than the Heavenly Earth Pill. After consuming one pill, the effects drastically decrease from the second pill onward. Ah. Kikik, don't be disappointed. Still, if I assist you with the Pushing Palace and Passing Acupoints, 2 technique, you can gain close to 10 years worth of internal energy even with the second pill. 10 years. If what he said was true, even with the assistance of an internal energy master in absorbing the pill, the efficiency would drop by almost half. Then if one were to absorb the pill alone, the efficiency would be even lower, so he understood why Baek Saha said it wasn't unconditionally good. However, it won't be of any use to me anyway. For Mok Jae-un, who used the death chi, divine medicines held no meaning or effect. But if a situation like this arose, it would be useful just like this time. Damn it. Jang Nungake, the second disciple of the society leader who had barely dispelled the poison chi, couldn't hide his anger. What kind of disgrace was this? He hadn't expected to kneel down, unable to endure the Poison King's poison chi even for a moment. Fortunately, it seemed that Wai So-yun, the third disciple, was also circulating her energy due to the poison chi. But what was annoying was that she seemed to have dispelled the poison chi even before him. In terms of internal energy, she was far ahead of him. King Wench. How was it that the gap between them kept widening? He was worried that she might reach a level that would be truly difficult to deal with. Perhaps he needed to take action before that happened. But there was something else that took priority. Is the Poison King Elder still inside? Jang Nungae asked Baek Sogang, the second son of Baek Saha. In response, Baek Sogang nodded and replied. Yes, he is. I need to have another conversation with him. You'll have to wait for now. Wait. What do you mean? My father is currently engaged in a conversation with the Shadow Clan Master's disciple. What? Jang Nungake furrowed his brows and looked at the entrance made of stone walls. That meant Mok Jae-un had endured that incredible poison chi and went inside. What was going on? No matter how proficient he was with poisons, how was he enduring the poison emitted by a master of poison techniques like the Poison King? He wasn't the only one puzzled by this. Mok Jae-un, Wai So-yun, who had dispelled the poison before him, was also unable to hide her surprise upon hearing that Mok Jae-un was inside the meditation room. His internal energy and martial arts level should be several ranks below theirs, so how was this possible? At that moment, rumble. The tightly closed stone door opened, revealing someone's figure. Wai So-yun, who noticed the person emerging from the entrance, momentarily turned her head to the side in embarrassment. Why? It was because Poison King Baek Saha's clothes had almost entirely melted away, leaving him nearly naked. Father. Seeing Baek Saha like this, his second son Baek Sogang approached him with wide eyes and asked in a trembling voice. Are your legs all right? Kikik, can't you tell by looking? Baek Sogang couldn't contain his emotions upon seeing his father Baek Saha standing firmly on his 2 legs. Hadn't he been paralyzed from the waist down, unable to walk as a side effect of not reaching the 8th level of the Wave Demon Poison scripture? Suddenly he noticed a change in his father's appearance. Father, could it be? Did you undergo a complete metamorphosis? Complete metamorphosis? At those words, Jang Nungake also stared at Baek Saha with widened eyes. His face, which looked as if he had rejuvenated by nearly 30 years, was completely different from before. Not only were his clothes melted, but it seemed he had truly undergone a complete metamorphosis. That meant he broke through his bottleneck? It signified the birth of a new master of the transformation realm within the Heaven and Earth Society. At that moment, Wai Soyun, who had been sneaking glances at the nearly naked Baek Saha, hurriedly brought her hands together and said, "Congratulations on achieving a great accomplishment." Congratulations on achieving a great accomplishment, Elder. Jang Nungake, who had been too shocked to speak, also congratulated Poison King Baek Saha. His mind became extremely complicated. With this, he couldn't afford to lose Poison King Baek Saha's support even more. Not only was he already a master of poison techniques, but he had even reached the transformation realm on top of that. He needed to bring him to his side by any means necessary. However, Kik, I merely obtained a small achievement, but I'm grateful for your congratulations. How can that be considered a small achievement? Father, I sincerely congratulate you on achieving a great accomplishment. Thank you. But with my clothes like this, it's truly embarrassing. Ah. At Baek Saha's words, his second son, Baek Sogang, hurriedly took off his outer robe and handed it to his father. Baek Saha took the outer robe and quickly tied the sleeves around his waist to cover his important parts. Seeing him like this, Jang Nungage thought it was a good opportunity and spoke up. Elder, how can we just let this day pass? Instead of this, we should go outside and celebrate your great accomplishment. It's fine. Pardon? But I appreciate your congratulations on my achievement, but didn't we already conclude our business earlier? What do you mean by that? Didn't we make a promise earlier? You said you would support me if I could stand up. At Baek Saha's words, Jang Nungake, the second disciple of the society leader, was at a loss for words. He had tried not to miss this opportunity, thinking Baek Saha would be in a good mood after achieving a great accomplishment. But he hadn't expected him to draw the line with what happened earlier. But Elder, a man's word is as good as gold. I don't go back on my word. Damn it, this stubborn old man. Jang Nungake was angry, but he couldn't express it. That was because Baek Saha's energy, which was already strong, had intensified to an incomparable level compared to before. Now it was difficult to even gauge the difference between them. What should I do about this? Jang Nungake wasn't the only one troubled by Baek Saha's resolute attitude of drawing the line. The third disciple Wai Soyun was also in a dilemma. If they missed today, the opportunity to persuade him would become distant. Tap tap. At that moment, Poison King Baek Saha tapped the shoulder of his second son, Baek Sogang, and pointed to Mok Jaeongun standing behind him with a nod, saying, "From today onward, this child is my formal disciple and a new member of our clan. Treat him like your own younger brother." Chapter 149, Repayment 3. From today onward, this child is my formal disciple and a new member of our clan. Treat him like your own younger brother. Everyone was unable to hide their bewilderment at Poison King Baek Saha's words. Formal disciple? In the case of his second son, Baek Sogang, he had never imagined his father, Baek Saha, would make such a statement. That was because the Baek clan had always valued the bloodline of the family for generations and never accepted outsiders as disciples. His father, Baek Saha, had also maintained that tradition, so he hadn't expected him to suddenly accept an outsider as a disciple. What exactly happened inside? He had been continuously wondering what had occurred inside that led his father, Baek Saha, to undergo a complete metamorphosis. It was unlikely for his father to show such favor to this child without something happening. Could it be that he had given him a clue to enlightenment? At that moment, Baek Saha spoke. "Why aren't you answering?" "Ah, I understand. I will do as you say." In the Baek clan, the orders of the clan head were absolute. If clan head Baek Saha had decided so, then that was how it would be. At that point, Mok Jaeongun intervened. "Disciple, you say? Kik, why are you so surprised? Since you'll be receiving my teachings, you're now my disciple." At his words, Mok Jaeongun replied with a troubled expression. Receiving teachings is just in exchange for the 3 society leader disciple tokens. Oh, what should I do about this? Pardon. For a youngster like you who has a deep understanding of poisons, I need to pass on my poison scripture, the Wave Demon Poison Scripture, but that can't be done for outsiders. What? Wave Demon Poison Scripture? Father. At those words, his second son, Baek Sogang, asked in surprise. That was because the Wave Demon Poison scripture wasn't an ordinary martial art or poison technique of the Baek clan, but a secret scripture. The Wave Demon Poison scripture was a transcendent poison technique that could only be learned by those of the main family's bloodline who were qualified to become the clan head, so it was bewildering to hear that he would pass it on. Even if it's a privilege of the society leader-disciple tokens, that's... Didn't I say I would accept him as a formal disciple? Are you questioning the order of this clan head? And no, that's not it. Baek Sogang waved his hands in surprise. The clan head and his father, Poison King Baek Saha, never went back on his decisions once he made them. Especially if he had decided something as an order from the clan head, anyone who tried to object would face severe consequences. Oh my. Mok Jae-eun clicked his tongue inwardly at Baek Saha's decision. He had thought the level of repayment was greater than expected when Baek Saha mentioned repaying the debt, but he hadn't expected this ulterior motive. At this, Mok Jae-eun brought his hands together in a salute and said, "Elder, I am grateful for your consideration, but I am a disciple of the Shadow Clan Master. How can I when I already have a master? Is there a rule stating one can't have two masters?" There was no such rule. However, this wasn't a matter of rules. Even if there's no such rule, this is about the Shadow Clan Master. I will personally go to the Shadow Clan Master and seek his understanding, so don't worry about that. It seemed he was determined to accept him as a disciple no matter what he said. At this, Mok Jae-eun was inwardly annoyed, but since he had no proper reason to refuse, he refrained from further objections. However, at some point he noticed that the gazes of the society leader's second disciple, Jang Nung-ak, and the third disciple, Y So-yun, were directed at him rather than Poison King Baek Saha. Seeing their peculiar looks, Mok Jae-eun licked his lips. So that's what it was. He seemed to understand the reason why Baek Saha publicly declared him as his disciple in front of them. It was to divert the attention of those who had been pestering him for support away from himself. It was a kind of ploy. Due to Baek Saha's declaration, regardless of his own will, Mok Jae-eun had become a joint disciple of the Poison King, one of the Five Kings and the Shadow Clan Master. As a result, he had become an even more enticing prey for those seeking a successor. It took nearly an hour of torment before Mok Jae-eun could leave the Baek clan's estate with his guard, Suk-young. Poison King Baek Saha was not only stubborn but also had a very troublesome personality. He made Mok Jae-eun participate in his grandson's first birthday celebration and personally introduced him to the Baek clan's blood relatives, making him acquainted with them one by one. Mok Jae-eun found this very annoying but played along without showing it. The reason was that Baek Saha was one of the Five Kings, a high-ranking executive. For now, the Poison King is the way to go. Considering Baek Saha's position, there was a high possibility of contact with the society leader. That was why, even when he said he would accept him as a disciple, despite finding it troublesome, Mok Jae-eun had reluctantly agreed. It remained to be seen how this would play out, but making contact with the society leader was currently Mok Jae-eun's top priority. As they moved away from the Baek clan's estate, Chong Ryong's voice echoed in his ears. "In the end, it seems your judgment was correct." Judgment? Yes. Someone like the Poison King is the best ally. Well, I don't know. He seems like an annoying old man to me. Didn't you gain the opportunity to learn the Wave Demon Poison scripture, known as the Supreme Poison Technique, thanks to helping that annoying old man? Well, that's true. In front of the Baek clan's blood relatives, Poison King Baek Saha had publicly declared Mok Jae-eun as his formal disciple and immediately took him to the clan head's hall to show him the verses of the Wave Demon Poison scripture. Despite accepting him as a disciple, Mok Jae-eun had shown no particular reaction, so Baek Saha wanted to demonstrate how extraordinary the Baek clan's poison scripture, the Wave Demon Poison scripture, was. Thanks to that, Mok Jae-eun had memorized all the verses of the Wave Demon Poison scripture just by glancing at them once. Of course, Poison King Baek Saha was unaware of this fact. There's no martial art as unconventional as poison techniques. Moreover, it can be considered the best when dealing with multiple opponents. Multiple opponents? I suppose so. Anyway, it's not bad. Why are you doing that? Chong Ryong asked Mok Jae-eun, stopping mid-sentence. The reason was that Mok Jae-eun, who had been walking, stopped and stared at something. His guard Suk-young also asked in puzzlement. "Young master. Why are you doing that? There's a guest waiting for you." "Pardon?" As he asked in return, someone walked out from the right corner. The moment he saw that person, Suk-young's eyes widened. Wu Horang, Grand Clan leader? He was none other than Wu Horang, the society leader disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun and the Grand Master of the Jeogwil clan. He was also known as the right-hand man and the most trusted subordinate of Wai So-yun, the society leader's third disciple, and was one of the 5 tigers, considered the top disciples within the Heaven and Earth Society. Wu Horang stared at Mok Jiongun with an expressionless gaze and opened his mouth. Despite your appearance, your perception is excellent. That's because you didn't particularly hide your energy. Humph. Wu Horang snorted. As Mok Jiongun said, he hadn't hidden his energy from the beginning. Unless it was a special case, he considered the act of hiding oneself to be something only cowards and rats would do. Wu Horang lightly scanned Mok Jiongun from top to bottom. What a strange person. How did he do it? The energy emanating from Mok Jiongun was merely at the level of the early peak stage. With such martial prowess, he absolutely couldn't have defeated his junior brother, Yip Wai-sean, yet it was said that he had won against him. And according to his lord, Wai So-yun, this fellow's true martial prowess might have reached the transcendent realm. If what she said was true, it meant this fellow had mastered a mysterious technique that could almost perfectly conceal his martial prowess. He's mastered a troublesome technique. But it was of no concern to him. Regardless of what technique he had mastered, he just needed to cut him down. Wu Horang said to Mok Jiongun. Do you know why I was waiting for you? Who knows? They say you're a clever fellow, but you can't even guess? I have no way of knowing whether it's a personal matter or because of an order from your lord. What? You seem to be looking at me with displeasure, so it doesn't seem like you're waiting for me just because of an order from your lord. At Mok Jiongun's words, Wu Horang chuckled. Indeed, he wasn't entirely devoid of a cunning side, as his lord had said. That made him even more displeased. You're right. I don't particularly like you. Starting from the fact that you're a hostage from the righteous faction, there are many reasons. Many reasons? Yes. Many reasons. Then it's just that you don't like me. I won't deny it. I see. I don't think I can do anything about those feelings, so may I ask what business you have with me? The young lady told me to bring you to her. Me? Yes. It's an order from the young lady, so you don't have the right to refuse, do you? At Wu Horang's words, Mok Jiongun laughed inwardly. It was indeed as he had expected. Even though she hadn't achieved her goal at the Baek clan's estate, the way she had retreated while giving him a meaningful look was in anticipation of this moment. Of course. Then should I just follow you? Yes. But listen. Yes. Before that, shouldn't we settle our score? Settle our score? Roar. As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Horang released a powerful aura. The aura was so fierce that Suk-young unknowingly took a step back. Mok Jiongun opened his mouth with narrowed eyes. That seems to go against your lord's wishes. Are you okay with that? This is purely a matter between you and me. A matter between you and me? You showed off your martial prowess against my junior brother, Yip Wai-sean, didn't you? Ah, I see. So that's what this is about. Thanks to you, my junior brother is now imprisoned in a detention cell. Of course, it's partly his own mistake, but how can I just let it slide when he's facing execution? At his words, Mok Jiongun chuckled inwardly. Was it really just about his junior brother? No matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem to be solely about that. It seemed to stem from a more personal sentiment. The matter regarding his junior brother was merely a pretext. So Mok Jiongun smiled and spoke with a troubled expression. I see. But you see, do you know why the young lady is summoning me? I know. Of course he knew. As Wai So-yun's trusted subordinate, he knew her intentions better than anyone else. If it were any other time, he would have suppressed his own feelings and done his best as a subordinate to fulfill her wishes. But strangely, the thought that he shouldn't let this fellow get close to the young lady took precedence. Even if he had to go against his emotions and make a mistake. Shing. Wu Horang drew his unique weapon, the 9 Harmony Blade, and said, You received a token from the young lady, didn't you? Yes. But I also have a token. Ah, is that so? Let's wager our tokens and duel. If you win, I will give you the token I received from my lord. But if you lose, I will take that token from you. This was Wu Horang's true objective. To retrieve Wai Soyun's token from Mok Jiongun. At his words, Mok Jiongun suddenly burst into laughter. Haha. Did you just laugh? Yes. I laughed. Roar. At that moment, a strong murderous intent surged from Wu Horang. How dare a mere youngster ridicule him? As he was doing so, Mok Jiongun lightly waved his hand and said, if I offended you, I apologize. I couldn't help but laugh because I could see through your true intentions. True intentions? Yes. What nonsense are you spouting? How can you? It seems you're not doing what your lord wants, but rather you're desperate to make your lord yours. Am I wrong? For a moment Wu Horang flinched. Seeing his reaction, the corners of Mok Jiongun's lips curled up. It seemed his prediction was correct. Swish. Then Wu Horang's blade swiftly flew towards Mok Jiongun's neck, stopping at his skin. However, whether it was due to the sharp blade or not, the skin was cut and blood flowed down. Are you trying to mock me? At Wu Horang's words, which revealed murderous intent in a low tone, Mok Jiongun shrugged his shoulders. How could I? But I merely stated the truth, but if you're getting so agitated, I can't help but be more certain. You. At that moment, Mok Jiongun grabbed the blade of Wu Horang's 9 Harmony blade. At this, Wu Horang tried to shake it off. However, surprisingly, even though he drew out his internal energy to nearly 6-star level, the blade didn't budge at all. This bastard's internal energy? It had far surpassed his expectations. It seemed that his Lord Wai Soyun's words about him possibly reaching the transcendent realm were indeed true. As he was astonished, Mok Jiongun said with a smile. Well, I can understand. Even if you want the person you admire to do well, if she truly becomes the successor, your relationship will become more fixed and distant. So you wouldn't be fixated on her becoming the successor. That's why you tried to take the young lady's token from me, using your junior brother as a pretext. At Mok Jiongun's words, Wu Horang's expression completely stiffened. Even though they hadn't engaged in a long conversation, he had thoroughly seen through his true intentions. What kind of fellow was this? As he was thinking that, but you see, do you think you can take it from me? Creak creak creak. The blade of the 9 Harmony blade, gripped in Mok Jiongun's hand, gradually bent. Chapter 150, Talent 1. The estate located southwest of the inner city headquarters of the Heaven and Earth Society was the base of the Primal Killing Pavilion, which was in charge of providing consultation related to sorcery. Diviner Zhou Yuigong was hastily heading towards the main hall of the estate, using his cane. Although he tried his best not to show it, he couldn't help but feel nervous. Senior Apprentice Brother. It was said that Senior Apprentice Brother Cho Taechong was currently in the main hall. He had heard that Diviner had gone somewhere after receiving a secret order from the society leader, but he had come to visit without any prior notice as soon as he returned. He couldn't help but feel uneasy. The preparations are solid. While his senior apprentice brother was away, he had quickly obtained the approval of the society leader through the vice society leader. In Seoke, the Primal Killing Pavilion leader who had become a living corpse ghost, due to Mok Jiongun's 6-people spirit summoning technique, had handed over his position to him. Yun, the disciple in the Corpse Blood Valley, had also attended and agreed. During the process, some senior diviners who supported his senior apprentice brother had objected, but what could they do? It was an order from the leader. Therefore, Zhou Yuigong was the leader of the Primal Killing Pavilion in both name and reality. He must have come as soon as he heard the news. He assumed that was probably the case. His senior apprentice brother rarely left the headquarters where the society leader resided unless it was a special case. So, the fact that he had come like this meant he must have heard the news that he had become the leader. Fortunately, he had already arranged for the previous Primal Killing Pavilion leader in Seoke to be moved away. He had sent him more than 50 ri away and erased his traces using sorcery, making it useless to track him down. As long as I prevent him from seeing it directly, there won't be a problem. It was no exaggeration to say that his senior apprentice brother's sorcery skills were on par with their master's. Deceiving such a senior apprentice brother was by no means easy. So despite having made all the preparations, he couldn't help but feel nervous. Greetings. When the guards guarding the front of the main hall saw Zhou Yuigong, they bowed their heads in greeting. At this, Zhou Yuigong asked, "Where is senior apprentice brother?" He said he would be waiting inside. I see. Understood. As Zhou Yuigong was about to enter, one of the guards said, "By the way, Diviner Cho Taechong entered carrying a large wooden box that looked like a coffin." A wooden box? What was that? Could it be related to the society leader's secret order? Puzzled, Zhou Yuigong eventually entered the main hall and headed towards the leader's office. Following the corridor and opening the door. Creak. He saw someone sleeping with their head tilted back and their two legs propped up on the leader's desk. Just by looking at the gray martial arts uniform with the yin-yang symbol, he could tell who it was. It was his senior apprentice brother, Diviner Cho Taechong. Zhou Yuigong's eyes narrowed. There was a separate place for guests to sit, but he deliberately sat on the leader's chair and slept like that. It was clearly meant to provoke him. Thanks to that, he could guess his senior apprentice brother's current mood. I mustn't get agitated. Regardless of the reason, he had taken away his senior apprentice brother's position. His anger was justified and it was bound to erupt in some way. Ahem. Zhou Yuigong deliberately made a coughing sound as he entered. Then, "You're here." Cho Taechong, who had been sleeping with his head tilted back, opened his eyes and spoke. At this, Zhou Yuigong brought his hands together with his cane and carefully greeted Cho Taechong. "Senior apprentice brother, you've arrived?" "Yes, I have. I heard you were away after receiving an order from the society leader. Seeing as you've heard that much, it seems you've definitely completed the handover." At the strangely sharp voice, tension subtly crept into Diviner Zhou Yuigong's eyes. His senior apprentice brother had been the frontrunner, so he had already anticipated that he would object to this matter. Zhou Yuigong calmly replied, "Yes. Although I still have many shortcomings, I will gradually adapt." Gradually adapt? Was that position so desirable to you? Gulp. At Cho Taechong's direct question, Zhou Yuigong unknowingly swallowed his saliva. No matter how well prepared he was, he couldn't help but feel nervous knowing his senior apprentice brother's sorcery skills better than anyone else. It was something he had to face eventually. Zhou Yuigong spoke with a forceful voice. "How can you say such hurtful words? I merely followed our master's orders." "Master's orders?" "Yes. I also declined, saying how could I inherit the position of leader when there is a senior apprentice brother like you?" "Decline?" "Yes. However, our master said that you must guard the society leader's side, so he couldn't entrust you with the position of leader." "Did he really say that? How could I lie to you, senior apprentice brother? If you truly find it hard to believe, we can call Yun. Are you telling me to play along with your false tune? It's not a lie. Are you denying our master's decision, senior apprentice brother?" "Deny? Ha!" Creak. Cho Taechong stood up from the leader's office chair. Seeing his attitude, Zhou Yuigong gripped his cane and prepared to respond. He had set up various defensive sorceries throughout the office in anticipation of this moment, so he could immediately activate the four-pressure barrier. At that moment, Cho Taechong formed a hand seal by connecting his index and middle fingers. Then, clank. The lid of the coffin-like wooden box on one side of the office opened by itself. Then something inside the wooden box straightened up and rose from its seat. Seeing this, Zhou Yuigong's eyes widened as if they would tear. It was none other than a master. It was In Seoke, the former primal killing pavilion leader who had become a living corpse ghost. On the forehead of the pale-faced In Seoke, there was a talisman with the word seal, Bong, written on it. Seeing him like this, Zhou Yuigong couldn't hide his bewilderment. He had taken measures to ensure that In Seoke couldn't come out by attaching heavy weights to him in the depths of a lake more than 20 li away from here. But how did he find him? Damn it. He didn't know why, but his senior apprentice brother had found their master who had become a living corpse ghost. That meant he had come here to remove him from this position. At this, Zhou Yuigong hurriedly formed a simple hand seal with his left hand. Clap. Clap. Gai. John. Yul. Ja. This was the hand seal of the 9-character activation technique to activate the 4-pressure barrier. It was a technique he had already prepared, so he naturally thought it would be activated immediately, but what? The barrier didn't activate. Unable to understand why, Cho Taechong clicked his tongue and said, "You've prepared quite a lot. But did you think I would just leave it alone?" Clench. At those words, Zhou Yuigong bit his lower lip tightly. Did he mean that he had dismantled all those techniques while he was briefly away? He had tried his best to make it unnoticeable, but as expected of his senior apprentice brother. So Zhou Yuigong hurriedly tried to unfold the spell engraved on his cane. But before he could even chant the spell, thud. Ugh. Something kicked Zhou Yuigong's back, causing him to fall forward. Thud. Something stepped on Zhou Yuigong's back as he fell. The weight was so heavy that the pressed area sank inward, making it extremely painful. Arg. Feeling the intense pain, Zhou Yuigong unconsciously turned his head. Shudder. There he saw a strange creature with a tall red horn and 4 huge legs pressing down on him with its front leg. The moment he saw it, Zhou Yuigong instinctively realized what it was. Toru. The name of this monstrosity was Toru, Tolu. It was a monster that lived in the Kunlun Mountains, known as the Separate Island of the Heavenly Emperor. Unlike its goat-like appearance, it was a very ferocious and monstrous beast that preyed on humans who entered the misty valley of the Kunlun Mountains. Also known as the Red Falling Star, it was his senior apprentice brother's proud spirit beast. Thud thud. Diviner Cho Taechong slowly walked over and said, "Who is it? What do you mean? With your skills, it's impossible to make our master who received the title of diviner, like that even if you die and wake up. Who helped you? Damn it." Driven into a corner, Zhou Yuigong's expression darkened rapidly. He thought he had made all the preparations, but it was far from enough. No, how did his senior apprentice brother find their master in the first place? Unable to understand, Diviner Cho Taechong approached and pressed down on Zhou Yuigong's right wrist, opening his mouth. The chains of the spell. As expected. This is. Swish. Cho Taechong made a light gesture, and the monstrous beast Toru pressed down on his back even harder. Crunch. Arg. Looking down at the suffering Zhou Yuigong with cold eyes, Cho Taechong clicked his tongue and said, "To be caught and dragged by such a thing. What a pathetic fellow." Stop. If you want me to stop, it's best to tell me right away. Who put the chains of the spell on you? Under the pressure of his senior apprentice brother Cho Taechong, Zhou Yuigong's eyes gradually weakened. Creak creak creak. The blade of the 9 harmony blade, gripped in Mok Jiangun's hand, gradually bent. At this, the eyes of Wu Horang, the trusted subordinate of Wei Soyun, the society leader's 3rd disciple, widened. The 9 harmony blade was a precious sword made by a famous craftsman who was acquainted with his master, Bright Blade King Sun Yun, and its hardness was different from ordinary swords. Moreover, when his internal energy was added, the sword became even harder. So if the sword could bend to this extent, it meant that Mok Jiangun's martial power had reached not just the early stage, but a proper pinnacle level. He's not someone to go easy on. Only then did Wu Horang become alert. This fellow was an opponent he absolutely couldn't subdue without properly dealing with him. At this, Wu Horang drew out his martial power. Roar. As he drew out his martial power from 6-star to 8-star in an instant, a repulsive force arose from the bending blade. Clang. Along with it, Mok Jiangun's hand gripping the blade was bounced off. Matching this, Wu Horang tried to widen his stance and create distance, but, bam. At that moment, Mok Jiangun's palm heavily struck Wu Horang's chest. Having already drawn out his martial power up to 8-star level, Wu Horang, who had endured it with his protective energy, also kicked Mok Jiangun's abdomen. Thud. The 2 people who had simultaneously struck each other were pushed back. Wu Horang, who had been pushed back, instinctively checked the distance he had been pushed back and the distance Mok Jiangun had been pushed back. 4 steps. He had been pushed back 4 steps, while Mok Jiangun had been pushed back 5 steps. Then, in terms of martial power, he could say he had a slight advantage. If it was to this extent, if he drew out his martial power to the extreme level, it seemed he could subdue the fellow without much trouble. Confident of victory, Wu Horang said to Mok Jiangun, "You will regret misusing that mouth of yours." Cough. At that moment, Wu Horang coughed as he felt a burning pain from inside. Wu Horang hurriedly wiped his lips with his sleeve and black blood was smeared on his sleeve. Seeing this, Wu Horang frowned and looked at Mok Jiangun. What the hell was going on? He had indeed been hit by a palm strike, but he had endured it with his protective energy. But what was this unpleasant pain? Rip. Wu Horang roughly tore open the upper part of his clothes. Then on his chest there was a palm-shaped mark left with blood vessels bulging out in a dark red color. Could it be? Wu Horeng muttered with widened eyes. Poison. Did this fellow possibly use a poison palm technique? Wu Horeng's eyes trembled. According to what he had heard from his lord Wai So-yun, Mok Jiangun had been accepted as a disciple by the Poison King just about an hour ago. It can't be. It was impossible for him to learn poison techniques and freely use them in just an hour. No matter how innately talented he was, that was impossible. Moreover, poison techniques were fundamentally different from ordinary martial arts in the first place. As he was bewildered, Mok Jiangun said with a smile. That's great. I wanted to test out what I had just learned anyway. Roar. On Mok Jiangun's hands, a dark red poison energy was seeping out and rising like a haze. Seeing this, Wu Horeng couldn't hide his shock. It was none other than the Toad Poison Demon Palm, one from the Poison King Baek Saha's poison scripture, the Wave Demon Poison Scripture.